live for you in your goodness and greatness. In your holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Well, it's great to see you. Like Pastor Andrew said, we're glad to have you here today. If we haven't had the chance to meet, my name's Corey, and I'm the lead pastor here at GFC. And I'm thankful that you just chose to spend part of your week worshiping with us. We had a great time at Easter last week, and I'm excited for what we're going to roll on into today. We're starting a brand new series called Just Breathe, and the tagline is this: overcoming this anxious world. Sometimes we do different things when it comes to the sermon series and things we talk about on Sundays particularly. Sometimes we'll just take a section of scripture, and we'll get back to that in a little bit. But sometimes it's really helpful to kind of look at what's going on in culture and what's going on in maybe our hearts and minds as followers of Jesus and just people around us, and say, what do we do biblically with some of the things that are happening in our culture? And so one of the things that we're going to unpack as we walk through some of this are some of the statistics around what it looks like in our culture in America, but also in other Western countries in particular, about why anxiety and depression and those kinds of things are on the rise. Like, why is that happening? And particularly, why is it happening in Generation Z and even younger than that? And so if you're a little bit older than that, like me, we're kind of looking and saying, okay, what's happened and what's going on with the teenagers and kids around it, and how do we handle that? And what does, specifically, right, this is the important question, what does Scripture say about it? How has God taught us to interact with these ideas, and what's the process around these conversations? And so that's what we're going to do over the next few weeks, and I'm excited to kind of dive into that today. Now, here's the thing. Sometimes you bring up a topic like this, and I understand sometimes we teach on topics, and you might say, I don't have a ton of experience with that, right? Maybe it's something that you don't experience a lot, and maybe anxiety isn't something that's at the top of your list and things you think about. For some of you, maybe it is, and for some of us, maybe we just, I bet you know somebody who has been impacted by this. So one of the good things we can do is kind of think, okay, I'm going to learn a little bit and try and handle this so that I can then help other people that I see kind of engaging with this. But my guess is that there are something in your life that probably gives you a little bit of anxiety. So let's think about that for a minute. Just open question, right? I won't ask you to answer. What gives you anxiety? Now, hopefully me asking that question doesn't make you start to like freak out, right? Don't go there. But just like, what are the things that maybe you have a fear of that some other people don't? Like some of you, like this is the obvious one. I don't have a fear of speaking in public. If you knew that you had to speak in public next week, maybe that's all you would be thinking about. For me, I have a dentist appointment on Wednesday, regular checkup. I know I'm not going to enjoy that, and Wednesday morning I'm going to be like, I just want this to be over, right? It's just the reality. There are certain things in life where we have to walk through or go through or handle, and they just make us, we don't like it. We would go, if I could not do that, that would be better. And so there's probably something, right? There's something you can think about that would maybe give you anxiety and have you have this process. Well, here's what I did. I went to ChatGPT and I searched the 10 anxious triggers, like most popular anxious triggers, and just kind of went, this is what it, so I'm sorry if I add to your anxiety with the things I'm going to tell you about, but this is what it said. Okay, so this is the list of 10. Uncertainty of the future was up there. Finances was up there. Health concerns, social situations, work stress, life change, trauma, fear of failure, global events, and lack of control. Now, if we were to think about that, I think that 10th one, lack of control, it just kind of encapsulates all the other ones. Encapsulates, that's a good word. Encompasses all the other ones. So you think about the lack of control in life change. Usually if we can control it, maybe we feel a little bit better about it, but right, it doesn't happen. Or our finances, if we feel in control of that, we probably don't have as much anxiety. Or work stress, if we are in control of the situation, we probably don't feel as much, but it's there. And so these are the top 10 things. And like I said, as I've been reading and thinking about this is something that's not just happening in America. It's something that it's happening in a lot of Western countries. So Europe would be on the same page as us. Canada would be on the same page as us, and kind of processing that idea. And these are the things that come up. So I would ask you this, right? What stands out to you? What was the thing that maybe when I read it or when you saw it on the screen, it just went, that's the thing? Or maybe you saw something and you thought, that's this person's thing. Maybe you have a friend, or maybe you have a coworker, or maybe it's your spouse, or maybe it's somebody, or sibling or something, and you just know in that area of life right now or at certain times, that was the issue. And this is the other way it works. Some of those things you might have said before, right? I had anxiety about this. Now I don't. Now it's something different. And anxiety can kind of just weave its way through our lives, and we kind of have to figure out, how do we deal with that? How do we handle that from a biblical perspective? Different question. I know I'm asking a lot of questions today, but here's a different question. I won't ask you to answer out loud. Have you ever had an anxiety attack or felt like you might have one? Some of us maybe would say no, but some of us, you probably can go to a place in your mind right now where you know that happened. I'll give you mine. When we were living in Pottstown, we had bought this house, okay? And when we bought this house, we didn't know this. We bought a house that was actually owned by friends of, well, my aunt and uncle were friends with the people who owned it, and we didn't realize it, okay? So, like, we get this house, we're like, yep, we bought it. We're talking to my aunt and uncle, and they go, what's the address? And we tell them, they're like, oh, that's this person's house. I kid you not, their names are Alex and Alex. They're married, Alex 1, Alex 2. We used to call it Pretty Alex and Regular Alex, okay? So that's how we would handle it. So they owned the house, they had bought it, they had redone it, and Alex, not Pretty Alex, Regular Alex, he knows how to fix a lot of things. Like, this is what he knows how to do. He's a handyman. He just knows all that kind of stuff. And so anytime something was wrong with our house, I would call Alex, because they also lived down the street. He rode his mower to my house one time. Alex is also a redneck, yes. So, like, this would happen, and so I would call Alex, and I would be like, hey, would you come help me with this issue? And so one day, it was really windy, and I realized some shingles were missing off of my roof. And I knew he was really busy, but he said he had some guys coming to his house to help him work on a project. And I was like, oh, well, if you've got a crew of people coming to your house, can you send them over for like 5 minutes to my house? I'll pay the difference, but can they fix the shingles on my roof, right? Because he lives down the street. I'm like, it's only a little bit away. We can do this. Okay. So he goes, okay, let me think about it. He calls me later that day, and he says, I'm coming over to fix your shingles right now. I'm like, okay, Alex is the kind of guy, if you ask him to do something, he'll do it for you. He's going to do it pretty quick. So I'm like, okay. So he shows up. He brings his family, because his kids and my kids were friends and everything. He brings a ladder. He brings all this stuff, and he goes, you're going to help me. And I said, no, I'm not. I said, Alex, that's why I called you, and I said, can your guys help me? Because I don't want to do it. He's like, you're going to help me. I'm like, okay. So I go, what shoes should I wear? He goes, Crocs. And I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, flip the thing behind the heel, put them in 4-wheel drive, we'll be okay. I'm like, all right, fine. So I'm like, all right. So we start working on this. We get up, I'm like, I climb the ladder, and then he's got one ladder going up the roof. He's got the other ladder leaning against the roof, and it's got these hooks that kind of hold on to the peak of the roof. So I transfer onto that, and I'm like climbing up. And this whole time, I'm actually fine. Like, I don't mind heights as long as I am secured. I have done zip lines. I have done rappelling. I have done rock climbing. If I feel like I am attached to something and I won't die, I'm pretty good with it. As long as I was holding onto that ladder, I was fine, because I was like hooked to the roof. I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. It's fine. He goes, get off the ladder. I said, no. And he said, I need the ladder. I said, fine. So, like, I get off, and I'm sitting, like, on the crest of the roof. And he goes, you need to help me move the ladder. I said, Alex, I cannot move. I am staying here, and you are on your own. So he, like, picks up the ladder, like, shifts it over us. He's like, whatever. He's more of a man than me. So he's, like, up there doing all this stuff. And I remember sitting on the peak of that roof, and I was uncomfortable. I didn't like being there, and I just wanted it to be over. And I could feel, like, my heart start to, like, race. And I was like, if I don't get myself under control right now, this is going to be really bad. Of course, my wife and his wife and all our kids are watching. So I'm like, my kids are going to watch me, like, pass out and roll off this roof. It's not going to be good. And so I just remember that moment. And it's funny, and I look back and I laugh at it. I'm not getting on a roof. My roof was really pitched. I'm like, I just not doing it ever again. But it's one of those moments you look back and it was scary. Right? And I had to really start to, it's kind of like the reason I called this Just Breathe, because that's what I was telling myself. I'm like, just breathe. It's not going to last forever. You'll be all right. Alex is going to get you off of here in one piece, probably. So, like, we'll be okay, right? But sometimes it's hard to get out of that state of mind. Sometimes it's very difficult to wrap your head around what's going on, and I can get out of this, and it's going to be okay. And if you haven't had that moment, sometimes that moment will hit you. You'll have a problem with a health concern for you or someone you love, and all of a sudden the world starts spiraling, or you lose a job you thought you had, and those kinds of things can just sneak in, and they'll get to us. And there's a handful of things I want to say before we really dive into this conversation and really this whole series. And here's the first thing, that anxiety is normal. It is normal to feel anxious about things in life. It's normal to have a situation where you say, I'm struggling with something, I don't know what to do, and it's making me nervous, it's making me worried, I don't know what to do with that. It's normal to feel that way. So when you do feel anxious, don't feel like something's wrong. Recognize it's your body or your mind connecting with you and trying to tell you something, but it's normal. Here's the other thing I want to say. Anxiety is actually useful. Anxiety is not an accident. Like, God didn't create us and go, oh no, there's this anxiety thing that showed up. It's actually what's supposed to help us understand. And maybe you felt this when you feel scared about crossing a busy road, right? If you didn't feel worried about that or cautious or anxious about that experience, there's probably something wrong with you. Or if you've ever watched a child and they get themselves into a situation that looks like they could fall and get hurt, and your spidey sense starts to go, I should walk over there in case they fall, and you go help them, that's a good thing. Anxiety can be useful when it's recognized in the right time, and when it shows up and we go, I can actually make sure that something bad doesn't happen by making sure I'm aware of this, that's good. And so it can be useful, and I would even say this, that anxiety will cause spiritual growth if we handle it the right way. I want to pause on that for a second, right? Yes, I believe this to be true, that if we connect with it the right way, it can cause us to grow spiritually if we understand what's happening. Now, I want to make another blanket statement just so we understand this. I am not saying, and I will never say, if you just pray more or follow Jesus more, all your anxiety will go away. That is not the point. And people do get diagnosed with anxiety, and people should go to good biblical counseling for their anxiety, and people should even at times take medication for their anxiety. All of those things, and depression too, all of those things are on the table. They are not things we're just saying, just be more like Jesus and you'll have less anxiety. That is not the conversation. The way we're having this conversation is, how do we recognize when those things show up? What do we do with them? How do we handle them in a biblical way? And what are our bodies and our minds telling us that God has placed inside of us? And how do we leverage that to understand and know God more? And that's where we're going to go in this sermon series. We're going to start this week in Genesis chapter 28. So if you want to turn there in your Bible or turn on your phone or your tablet, however you want to get there. As always, all the verses and everything will be on the screen. You can grab the follow along there. If you want, scan. If you miss it there, it's on the back of the Next Steps card. And just in case you haven't been with us for a while, that's a great spot to follow along. But also you can email the notes to yourselves. You can ask questions. It's all kinds of fun stuff at the follow along. I would recommend it. And if you're watching online at home live, you can do that as well. So Genesis 28, we're going to start in verses 10 through 12. So this is what it says. Meanwhile, Jacob left Beersheba and traveled toward Haran. Now, I want to set this. I know I always do this. I read 3 words and I'm like, stop. Okay, so let's just plan it out. Just so we kind of get ourselves anchored to where we're at in the narrative of Scripture, okay? This is very helpful. I'll teach you a tool that's very helpful, especially when we're talking about Old Testament stuff. If you want to understand the flow of kind of the Old Testament and thinking through where we're at in the story, you want to remember 4 letters, okay? Those 4 letters are A, I, J, J. Here's what they stand for. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. So that's how it trickles down. So you've got Abraham, father of the nation of Israel, right? So he's pretty far at the beginning, right? Isaac is his son. So you have that whole story where God tells him he's going to have a son, and then God says you just sacrifice him, but it changes, and God makes sure that he has the sacrifice available, okay? Jacob comes next, okay? So you've got him after Isaac, you understand? And then you've got Joseph. So that's how you get from all the way from the beginning of the nation of Israel. And we know Joseph, the guy with the colorful coat that ends up working in Egypt, that's how the nation of Israel gets all the way to Egypt, and then that bridges us into Moses. Okay, so when you kind of grab onto A-I-J-J, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, you kind of recognize where we're at in the story. So we get Jacob. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. We're third in line here. So this is before the time of Joseph, but after Isaac. So he leaves Beersheba and he goes toward Haran. So it says at sundown, he arrived at a good place to set up camp and stopped there for the night. Jacob found a stone to rest his head against, and he laid down to sleep. As he slept, he dreamed of a stairway that reached from earth up to heaven, and he saw the angels of God going up and down the stairway. Verses 13 and 14. At the top of the stairway stood the Lord. And he said, I am the Lord, the God of your grandfather Abraham and the God of your father Isaac, and the ground you are lying on belongs to you. I'm giving it to you and your descendants will be as numerous as the dust of the earth. They will spread out in all directions, to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. Verses 14 to 15. And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. What's more, I am with you, and I will protect you wherever you go. One day I will bring you back to this land, and I will not leave you until I have finished giving you everything I have promised you. Now let's pause on that for a minute. Just look at that first sentence, right? And all the families of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. This is one of the moments in Scripture we can look and go, that's us. Because we know that Jesus would come down through this line and that he would be that blessing that is to all people. And so we can look at this and say, we've been blessed by Jesus. So when God's talking about Jacob, talking to Jacob about this, we're in the mix. It's pretty cool. And so we get to be part of that blessing. And so then we keep going down to verses 16 and 17. It says, then Jacob awoke from his sleep, and he said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I wasn't even aware of it. But he was also afraid and said, what an awesome place this is. It is none other than the house of God, the very gateway to heaven. Verse 16, the first verse right there, is the one we're going to talk about today, and the one we're going to come back to over and over again. I think it's very interesting the way that he says this. He says, surely the Lord is in this place, and I wasn't even aware of it. Right? He just stopped to sleep for the night, right? He's like, I'll camp here. He grabs a rock as a pillow. That sounds awful, right? But he goes to sleep right there, has this incredible dream, sees all this happen, wakes up, and says, I was just trying to find a place to sleep. I didn't even know God was here. I think this is kind of what happens when we find ourselves in anxious situations. And I would say it this way, that anxiety shows up when we are unaware of God's presence. We forget that he's right there with us. We are unaware of what's going on. Let me ask a different question. Lots of questions today. Let me ask a different question. Have you ever seen a miracle? Think about that for a minute. Have you ever seen a miracle? My guess is most of us, when I ask that question, our brain goes to, have I seen something happen that wasn't supposed to happen? Right? So maybe someone you know or you got a diagnosis, or they got a diagnosis, and then at some point the diagnosis is gone, right? And the doctors are like, we don't know what happened, right? For some reason they're healed, they're good, no problems, and we have no explanation other than a miracle. Or you had a situation where you needed some money and somehow it worked out and it worked and somehow God sent it or somebody at the right time showed up and all of a sudden there might be certain situations where we would say, I have seen something out of the norm, and we call those things, and Jesus called those things, miracles. But I think we should think about this a little bit differently. In some of my reading and conversations I've had, the idea was this. Maybe we should stop thinking about the things that only happen sometimes as miracles and start thinking about the regular things that happen all the time as miracles. I want to give you a couple of examples of this. Here's this idea. This is going to come completely out of left field, but you'll get there in a minute, okay? Here's the idea. There are 37 sextillion biochemical reactions happening in your body every single second. Now, if you're like me, there's a bunch of words on that screen I don't understand. So let me help you. This number is a sextillion. It's a 1 with 21 zeros after it. So you go million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion. That's how much money it is. 37 of those is how many biochemical reactions are happening in our body every second. Now, that's the other word I don't know, biochemical reactions. Let me help us there. A biochemical reaction occurs when, within living organisms, when two different atoms or molecules interact to form a new molecule or compound. Is that helpful? Probably not. But that's the idea. That's what it is. Okay? So this is what we need, all of us, and every living thing needs, in order for all the processes in our body to work. Okay, so like we take in food, we digest it, turn it into energy. That's a biochemical reaction. So 37 sextillion of those every second are happening within us, and we don't have to tell one of them to happen. It just happens. Let me go to a different one that's probably a little easier to wrap our head around. Every heartbeat pumps 6 quarts of blood through 60,000 miles of veins, arteries, and capillaries in your body. This is 2 times the circumference of Earth. Now, I read this in a book called A Million Little Miracles, and that book is out on the bookshelf in case you're interested in reading it. And I read this, and I went, that's not true. I was like, this is one of those things that people say for like a long time, and then it just becomes like, oh, yeah, that's a thing. And then like you look it up, and it's like, no, that's not true. No, this is actually true. So in our bodies, that's how many miles there are of veins, arteries, and capillaries, and our blood pumps, or our heart pumps the blood through those, and we don't have to tell it to happen, right? None of us are sitting here thinking, pump blood, pump blood, pump blood, pump blood, right? We don't have to think about that. It just happens because that's the way we were created. Here's one more for us. If your double helix DNA, or mine, were laid end to end, it would reach to the moon and back nearly 150,000 times. This is one of the major reasons when people go, there's no God, I laugh. Because first of all, you can think that things happen by accident, and even you can kind of, it's not true, but you can kind of get to the point where you're like, something comes from nothing, like, okay, like whatever. There's theories around that. But the fact that something comes from nothing, and then it's got an owner's manual that's this much information, that doesn't happen. That you can understand and know, because our DNA tells us everything about us. And it has all of that working together. And it helps us understand. Like, you can look at DNA and go, you might have this sickness because your DNA, like, it's the owner's manual. You don't just find a car in the middle of nowhere, out of nowhere, and it has the owner's manual and how it got that. Right, it doesn't happen. That's how much DNA here's what I want us to understand with this, right? You are a miracle. The fact that those things are true, and they happen every single day, and we don't even give it a thought, means every second of life is a miracle. And this is true, that you and I are surrounded by miracles. The fact that everything around, it's not just you and me that this happens to, but all the people in the world, and then even just the plant life and the animals, all of that stuff, it's all built and created by God, and it all works together. We are surrounded by miracles. Now you read verse 16 of chapter 28. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I wasn't even aware of it. We didn't wake up this morning and think about those things I just told you. Yet that was the case, because God, even while we were asleep, was making sure he created us so that all of those things would keep happening, even when we had no idea that was the case. Albert Einstein had this quote. He said, there are only 2 ways to live your life. One is as if nothing is a miracle. The other is as if everything is. And I think we would do well to start to think like everything was a miracle. And to say, look at what God has done in us, through us, for us, and live in that space rather than thinking through and wondering if we'll ever see a miracle that's out of place. We look at the things that happen every day, and it would change us. Now, all of those things were focused in us. I want to go to a different scale now, okay? I hid something around the room this morning for all of us, okay? So if you look in the seat backs in front of you, every other seat back has one, you will find a golf ball that looks like this. If you're next to somebody and they steal your golf ball, I'll make sure you get one before you leave, okay? But you can all find it. I tried to hide them so the kids wouldn't get them this morning. So we have like another Easter egg hunt for you, okay? So you guys get to participate in this one. So you can grab it. It's a practice golf ball, so it's a little squishy, right? So you're all welcome to take these and take them home. If you leave them here, Pastor Andrew and I are just going to practice our golf swing this week. But you're welcome to have this. Here's what I want to walk us through. This is a conversation that I heard years ago by a pastor named Louis Giglio. And you can go look at the whole conversation. Maybe you've heard this before, but I want to lay it out there for all of us to hear. He did this talk probably back in like 2009 or so, somewhere around there. And he stole it from his youth pastor. So good pastors, we just steal stuff and hand it off to the next person, okay? So, but it's this idea. And we're going to start with this phrase. If the earth were the size of a golf ball. So this is the idea, that we would hold this golf ball, and if we shrunk the universe down so the earth was this big, okay, so that's what you're looking at. You're looking at the earth is this size, and everything else has now shrunk to this level. Think about this. So if the earth were the size of a golf ball, the sun would be 15 feet in diameter. Now, I'll give you a reference for that. Earlier this week, I measured from this edge of the wood backdrop to that edge of the wood backdrop. That's 16 feet. So take a foot off of either side of that. This is Earth. That's how big the sun is that we see every day. I almost said look at every day. Don't look at the sun. But we know it's there, right? That's how big the sun would be if the Earth were this big. Let's do a different one. If the Earth were the size of a golf ball, there's another star called Betelgeuse. And Betelgeuse would be 6 Empire State Buildings high in diameter. So you take this to New York, right? You put it on the sidewalk, and you look up and you imagine 5 more Empire State Buildings on top of the one you're looking at. That's how big that star would be. This is just a Google. I don't know if it's that star. I Google image searched that, and that's what came up. So we put it on there. But that's how big it would be if the Earth were the size of a golf ball. I've got 2 more. There's another star called Musifi. If the Earth were the size of a golf ball, Musifi would be 2 Golden Gate bridges end to end in diameter. Who's been to San Francisco? Anybody? A handful. So if you look at one Golden Gate bridge, it's really hard to see on both ends, right? Like it's hard to see both sides. You put them next to each other. That's how big that star would be if the Earth were the size of a golf ball. I got one more. If the Earth were the size of a golf ball, the star called Canis Majoris would be the height of Mount Everest. That's 6 miles high. So if the Earth were the size of a golf ball, and you're looking at this star, you're looking at Mount Everest. That's how big it is. And you look at this little golf ball and you think, where's my little speck that represents me, right? On this little golf ball. And then we look back at verse 16. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I wasn't even aware of it. Maybe you've heard that song, like, he's got the whole world in his hands. You know that song? It's talking about God. That song sounds dumb now, doesn't it? Because even if God was this big and he could hold the whole world in his hands, it's like, well, Canis Majoris is still the size of Mount Everest. Like, God's still way too small in that conversation. Very different. My point is not to bring all this up and go, so just have a bigger view of God. Like, I understand that anxiety is helpful. It's normal. We understand that it's there for a reason. But I think that this is true, that anxiety creeps in when our view of God is too small. When we look at him and we say, you can't handle my problems. We look at him and say, why are you making this decision? We look at him and say, you clearly don't love me because X, Y, and Z happened. And then we think back and go, if he could just hold the world as a golf ball, he is far too small in that understanding of my brain. I can't even imagine what he's doing. And yet he created all of us. That all those things we talked about with our veins and capillaries, also, and he's got all of that under control. But we look at him and we say, but you clearly don't understand what's going on. We're going to fast forward a little bit to John chapter 1. John chapter 1, we're going to pick up in verses 43 to 46. This is right at the beginning of Jesus' ministry, and he's just calling the first disciples. So it says, the next day Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, come and follow me. Philip was from Bethsaida, which was Andrew and Peter's hometown. So Philip went to look for Nathanael and told him, we have found the very person Moses and the prophets wrote about. His name is Jesus, the son of Joseph from Nazareth. Nazareth, exclaimed Nathanael. Can anything good come from Nazareth? Now let's kind of think about this for a minute. What are they communicating to Nathanael? They're saying, Nathanael, we have found the Messiah. This is who, like we go Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, like this is the conversation that those guys were having thousands of years before these guys come around. And they go to Nathanael and they go, we've found the Messiah. By the way, if you look at the Old Testament and the New Testament, there is what we call the 400 years of silence. It means there was no new revelation from God for 400 years. They hadn't heard anything. And so now all of a sudden they've got Jesus and they see all the things he's doing and how incredible he is. And they go to Nathanael and they go, Nathanael, The person that all of our ancestors have been waiting for, that we have learned about and we have talked about and we have waited for all of these years is here. And they go, he's from Nazareth. And Nathanael goes, there's no way. There's no way. He can't be good and be from Nazareth. By the way, this was something that many people would say. This was kind of the idea, like what happens in Vegas, you hear that, like this is kind of the idea, like nothing good comes out of Nazareth. That was kind of the idea. It wasn't just Nathanael's thing. This was a well-known idea. And Nathanael in that moment hears that the Messiah is there, the one that they've been waiting for, and his instant thought process is to say, definitely not, because there's no way he could come from Nazareth. But this is what I think happens, that when anxiety takes over, is because we have placed our parameters around who God is and what he can do. Nathanael immediately placed his own parameters around Jesus. He can't be the Messiah. Look where he's from. And we would look at God and say, well, God can't be good because bad things happen. God can't be right because look at what this happened. God can't be at work in my life because this happened over here and I don't understand why, and this is the thing. We put our parameters about what we believe and who we believe God to be, and God's just up there watching us, and he loves us, and he goes, I'm also taking care of Canis Majoris, and I'm also making sure your heart keeps beating. When you put it in perspective like that, you think about when we come to God that way, not when we come to God and say, I'm nervous, I'm anxious, God, I need your help. That he wants us to do and welcomes us and says, please, I'm here, and he wants us to come to us. But when we come and we shake our fist at God and go, clearly you're not who you say you are because of my circumstance, we think about all the stuff we just talked about. Our circumstances are pretty small compared to what he can handle and the God that we know him to be. So we have that anxiety come in because we place our parameters. But here's what Jesus does. In verses 46 to 49, Philip says to Nathanael, come and see for yourself. He goes, okay, you think that nothing good can come out of Nazareth? Why don't you come see? And it says, as they approached, Jesus said, now here is a genuine son of Israel, a man of complete integrity. How do you know about me? Nathanael asked. I think Jesus was way funnier than we give him credit for. Because he knows what Nathanael's thought process is, and he sees him coming. He goes, oh, look at this guy. He's such a man of it. And then like Nathanael's like, how do you know who I am? Like, Jesus is messing with him, and it's fantastic, and I can't wait to talk to him about that. Jesus replied, I could see you under the fig tree before Philip found you. Then Nathanael exclaimed, Rabbi, you are the Son of God, the King of Israel. Now, here's what we don't know, and the scriptures don't say this, but when I read this, this is where my brain goes. Nathanael was sitting under this fig tree. I don't think he was just sitting there under the fig tree. Like, I think he was, but like I think there was something in his heart and in his mind that he was wrestling with. That when Jesus says, I saw you under the fig tree, what he's really saying is, I know what you're thinking and going through right now. I understand what's happening in your life. That's why Nathanael, he's like, okay, great, I was sitting under a fig tree. I sit under a fig tree every day, right? That could have been his response, and his response was, no. Now I realize that you are the Son of God because clearly you know what was going on in my heart and mind at that moment. And Jesus is looking at him saying, I care about you, right? I understand you. And so Nathanael changes his mind, and then Jesus responds with this in verses 50 to 51. Do you believe this? Just because I told you I had seen you under the fig tree, you will see greater things than this. Then he said, listen to this. I tell you the truth. You will all see heaven open and the angels of God going up and down on the Son of Man, the one who is the stairway between heaven and earth. This is Jesus going back and quoting Genesis 28. Jacob falls asleep. He gets this vision of this stairway, right? And the angels are going up and down. Now, Jesus says it's not just a stairway. Jesus says he is the stairway. And he is the stairway that connects heaven and earth. It's not just any random stairway anymore. He's it. Now, we didn't keep reading. We're going to go back to Genesis 28 just for a second, read verses 18 and 19, because we didn't catch this. I didn't read it before. But this was Jacob's response then when he woke up. It says, next morning Jacob woke up very early. He took the stone he had rested his head against, and he set it upright as a memorial pillar. Then he poured olive oil over it, and he named the place Bethel, which means house of God, although it was previously called Luz. It's a pretty good name upgrade, isn't it? Like, Luz is lame. Okay, like Bethel's good. Okay? He called it Bethel. Why? Because it was the house of God. Listen to me. This is what I want you to understand. If you know Jesus, this is true. The Son of Man, the stairway between heaven and earth lives in you. We have this connection to Jesus that Jacob never could have even imagined. Right? God gave him some information, said this would be a blessing and your family would be a blessing, all that stuff. But then Jesus says, I am the stairway. And later he would say, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. We have this connection, this Savior that knows us and understands us and is there with us every single second of every single day. And by the way, he's the one that created everything that we know and understand around us. He doesn't just have it all in his hands. He's got it all figured out. He knows every second of every day and every process and every thought we're going to have. And he is in and amidst most of it. Paul understood this. And in Galatians chapter 2, this is what he would say in verse 20. My old self has been crucified with Christ. It is no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. We take this little silly golf ball example and we say, yeah, that if the earth was the size of a golf ball, I would be this tiny little speck that I could never even see. And yet God has all of the other stuff we talked about in control. And he said, I'll come to the speck. And I'll die for the specks. And I'll be a speck. Because I love them. And he looks at us and he says, we are the best among all the creation. I mean, if you could create a star that was the size of Mount Everest, you wouldn't care about this golf ball. We'd go, yeah, that was nice. It's kind of cool, but look at what I did over here, right? And God looks at us and says, no, you are made in my image. You are the prized possession of creation. And I love you. And I would give my life for you. And if you know Jesus, I think this must be the case. And this is not to shame anybody. This is not to pull us down. This is to lift us up. Okay, this is how I want us to understand this. That our relationship with Jesus should have a profound impact on our anxieties. Not that we know Jesus and all of a sudden all our anxiety is gone. That's not the point. Anxiety can be helpful. Anxiety is normal. All of that is still true. But when we recognize anxiety through the lens of understanding Jesus, through the lens of understanding what God said to Jacob and then what Jesus said to Nathaniel, we recognize he's there with us every single second and he understands every piece of it. He's not walking away from us. So when you're nervous about the financial situation, take it to him. When you're nervous about the relationship situation, take it to him. But we take it to him and understand Jesus is in control of all of these things. And he loves us and cares for us and wants us to know who he is. So here's where we're going to end today. There's not a ton for us to do. If you're so inclined, I know some people are like, I don't really care about a golf ball, but it can be helpful. Here's what I want you to do. It's a little squishy, right? So it's kind of like a stress ball. Here's what I would challenge you to do. Maybe you write something on it. Maybe it could just be the reference, Genesis 28:16. When you feel that anxiety coming, you look back at it and look at what Jacob said. Surely the Lord is in this place and I didn't know it. But you change it in your mind. Surely the Lord is in this place and I do know it. You just hold on to it. Or you write that on the golf ball. Or put it somewhere where you're going to say, when you have anxiety, you can grab it. You can even just close your hand around it and hold on for a minute. Say, God cares enough to keep all that other stuff going. He cares enough about my situation. I will not go through this moment. I will not go through this day. I will not go through this season and say, God, I don't know God is there. I will be so aware of the Savior that is in my heart. And that will change the way that I think about this. So I'm going to invite the band back up. And this is the idea that we're going to land on today. And we can worship in this way, I hope, together. that this idea would be true. Surely the Lord is in this place, and we are aware of him. Maybe you've heard this before, right? If you've been in church long enough, you've probably heard it. Whenever we gather like this, the God of the stars is here. Just settle in that for a minute. Right? He's here. 2 or 3 are gathered in his name. That's why we're here. We're gathered in his name. We're gathered to worship him. We're gathered to think about him. He's here. He has other things to worry about. And yet he goes, nope, I'm going to be here with you. And we can worship him like he's here. Not like he is far away. Not like he's looking at us like a golf ball. But that he would be present in us. So I challenge you this week, this month, however long, put this somewhere. It's going to remind you. And go through life this way. Don't let Jacob, learn from Jacob's quote, right? Don't let it be true of you. Surely the Lord is in this place, and we and I am aware of it.